Hello and welcome to You Matter. This is session 5. Hello, welcome back to episode 5. We're getting into the swing of the podcast now, and thanks for all your feedback. I'm starting to get a really good idea of what you enjoy, and it's no surprise to me, but really useful to hear that you're enjoying the conversations, particularly the ones that show that we're kind of all in it together. And even when I interview greats in our profession, like in episode 4, Joe Gibson, we find out that even though our careers may not have all followed the same path, many of our hopes, our dreams, the things we worry about, the things we think we do but nobody else does, or that we get stressed about that nobody else does, we find just by talking about it and having these conversations that there's a lot of a commonality. So thank you for your feedback, and I'm really glad you're enjoying those types of conversations. So today I am with Evie Martin, and Evie is one of those names that emerged through the pandemic, in this case specifically because of the pandemic, because she founded an organisation that many of you will have heard of. She calls it a project actually, PhysiosOnline, which was her way of trying to make sure that physios and other clinicians continue to be able to deliver good care through the pandemic, and that patients continue to receive good care. And through social media, Evie has just kind of burst onto the scene, and hers is a name that I'm sure if you haven't already become familiar with, then you will very soon. So the topic of our podcast today is what is enough? That's quite a broad topic area, and under that heading we discussed all sorts of things. We discussed how much is enough money, how many qualifications do you need, how many courses do you need to go on before you feel enough. We also covered Stoicism and how that has influenced Evie, and how perhaps she'd like it to influence her a little bit more. And not related to the topic heading, but of interest to some of you, we even managed to cover the rights and wrongs of bunny castration. I won't explain too much, but spare a thought for Bruce. Don't worry if you're squeamish, there's not too much detail. All right, so I really hope you enjoy this conversation, and let's get on with the podcast. Hi there, so welcome to the next episode of You Matter, and I'm really pleased to be here today with Evie Martin, who I think I can call a friend these days. Evie is one of those friends that I've met but not actually met in lockdown, but we've had loads of good conversations about a range of topics, and to be honest, such a range of topics that we might need to be careful not to spill into some of them during this podcast. But maybe we will. Maybe that will be more amusing. Anyway, I'll introduce the topic that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But first of all, I want to introduce you to Evie. For many of you, I'm sure I don't even need to do that, because Evie has a fantastic, what do you call it, Evie, a business or a movement or an organisation called Physios.
I call
Online.
it like a project.
A project.
Yeah, project maybe.
Okay,
so word, yeah.
Evie has a great project called PhysiosOnline, and I will let her explain a little bit more about that. But Evie, on a personal level, let's just locate you in the world. You're in Norway. Whereabouts in Norway?
I'm in Bergen in Norway, which is on the west side of Norway, the nicest part of the country.
Is it really?
Yeah, it definitely is.
And how's it over there at the moment with COVID and weather?
Listen, like COVID-wise, we've been incredibly lucky compared to what's been happening in the UK, or really most places. And we had a very short lockdown. Things are very well under control. Yeah, we can't complain on that front.
Great.
And weather-wise, I mean, it's beautiful today. It's the 5th of May. It's starting to smell like flowers in the air.
I think I saw a post from you recently that you said May was your favourite month in Norway. Is that right?
Yeah. It's like you get all the good weather, but with none of the horrible biting insects. So that's nice.
Nice. And I know it's an unusual day for you. There's possibly a few things on your mind. We've already established that Evie has a bunny being castrated today. So that dilemma is on your mind, isn't it, Evie? And we need to distract you a bit.
listen, it's an ethical quandary. Like, it really is. I mean, should we really be castrating this bunny? I don't know. I'm the kind of person that I really worry about these things. I don't know if it's for the best, but we've been told that it is. Anyway, I'm thinking of Bruce today. He'll soon be home, so we'll see how that
Spare a
goes.
thought for Bruce, everyone, and we'll try our
Cheers.
best to take Evie's mind off it.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks, Joe. I'm planning to use this as a therapy session. So
we can feed in a little bit of therapy, that's fine. So yeah, sorry, I was going to give you the opportunity just to explain a little bit about PhysiosOnline, which I know isn't wholly the topic of this podcast, but yeah, just let everyone know what PhysiosOnline is about.
Well, PhysiosOnline was born of the COVID crisis, as Bill sort of used this little phrase, and it's stuck with me ever since.
Who's Bill?
But yeah, Bill Taylor, the male pelvic health physio, one of the first to join our group, and he's been just wonderful the whole way through. But PhysiosOnline, basically what we are is a group of physiotherapists. It started out as people who were interested in doing video consults, or people who were interested in promoting internet-based healthcare generally. In other words, people who thought it was a really great idea to do video consults if you were a physio. Because I don't know, like, if you can, it's sort of hard to take your mind back to it now, back to the start of lockdown. But certainly when I started doing video consults, there were really quite a few physios who were not a fan of the idea at all. There was a fair bit of pushback. And so, yeah, we were just really interested in getting together and supporting physios who were able to and wanted to have a really good go at doing video consults and reach patients who actually really needed them. So, during lockdown, everyone lost access to healthcare. I mean, it's been an incredible time really for population health. So I saw myself in my own clinic the difference between patients who had been to see me once or twice a week on video consult and those who had nothing. So I just sort of saw this real dramatic difference in function between these two groups. And that was very motivating to me. I just wanted to then encourage more physios to be doing video consults, and particularly in Ireland and the UK.
Yeah.
So
it's really grown, hasn't it, from a little idea to a pretty big project.
Yeah, because at the start, it was really just, all I just wanted to do really was to get patients at home or people at home who needed physio to be able to connect with physios who could do it and wanted to. But it's kind of like morphed into something else over time, because what ended up happening was I ended up like doing these interviews with all these physios to talk about what their work was like. And then it ended up sort of promoting different types of physiotherapy practice within physio. So it's grown into this kind of, I suppose, like a information campaign about what physio actually is. Because I think part of the problem with going over to video consults was that many people couldn't really visualize how a physio could help them by video.
Yeah.
And that was because of kind of a misperception in the public about what physios actually do. I think most people think we're kind of a massage and a magic sponge kind of profession. And so I just thought it was a good idea to try to get the message out about what our skill set actually is.
It really highlighted
to kind of
problem we didn't really know we had, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like the people who joined that group at the start, particularly, we were really focused on like neurological physios and pediatric neuropeds and pelvic health physios, and even oncology. People who really, I suppose they had patients who really needed to keep on seeing them, and they couldn't just come in to see them in their clinic. So these physios just went, right, we have these tools, we're going to figure out how to use them, and that's what we're doing. And so the group was a good place for them to just get support from each other, promote what each other were doing, so that I kept on saying, like, raise each other up. That's basically what the whole group did. So yeah, and it was, I mean, there's the things those people in the group managed to get done. Like Lorna, I remember her telling me about like there was a baby with neonatal stroke who she followed up and helped all the way through lockdown.
On video consult.
On video consult, exactly. Like, and if she had just gone, oh well, lockdown, can't do physio anymore. Like, she really, really was important to that baby and the baby's family, and was able to treat the baby and in her home environment. It just.
Who's Lorna, Evie? Let's give her a bit of a
Lorna. Her name is Lorna Saunders, and she's with Positive Steps Physiotherapy.
Yes, I
yeah. There's we've another peds physio as well who's talked to me a good bit. Linda Pedley. She's a physio for kids and young adults. And again, it's a similar thing where she's helping children and young adults who really can't just go long periods of time with no physio input. So, Linda wasn't used to doing loads of computery type stuff before lockdown, but she just looked around and went, right, how am I gonna get this done? And off she went.
Yeah, it's really sparked innovation, hasn't it?
It has, and the neurological as well. There's a Karen, the first person to join PhysiosOnline UK, the UK side of the site, was Karen Hodgson. She's a neuro specialist physio. She's with Hallamshire Physiotherapy in Sheffield. And Karen was absolutely amazing. She ended up putting her entire PD Warrior program, so Parkinson's Disease Warrior, this training program for people with Parkinson's, just moved it all over to online. Again, this is before this was a normal, thing. Now everyone is doing it, but at the start, she was just so, I don't know, just really resourceful, just decided, sort of not doing something was not an option. She just went, I'm going to keep on doing this and reach my patients. So it was these kinds of people who joined at the start. I was interesting because like I started using Twitter for the first time then back when I set up PhysiosOnline. And it was driving me mad. The kind of, there was all this kind of like debate about, are video consults a good idea? Are they, can you do a proper assessment on video consultation? And like, after a little while, I started to lose patience with the debate at all, because I was just kind of going, why are we talking about this when our colleagues who are working in neuro and peds and palliative care and oncology, when they're just going, okay, let's just get on with this. Can we not just raise up our colleagues who are actually just really trying to get the job done? And instead you had a lot of musculoskeletal physios kind of going, but how do you do a proper assessment? And so there were, I got a bit impatient after a while with the MSK physios really, but some were fantastic. Like right at the start of PhysiosOnline, like there are people who chatted to me in the MSK world that like Adam Meekins, I'm pretty sure Adam Meekins, I don't know how much he's responsible for, but the fact that he's so kind of famous in the physio world, and he chatted to me near the start of this whole project because I'd put out a message saying, please, can any physio who's kind of well known with experience doing video consults, could you please talk to me so that I can encourage other physios to do video consults? And he said, yeah, I'm sure I will, Evie, I'll talk to you. And he made a video with me about how to do video consults right at the start, really, really kindly. And I think that gave us a really, really big boost. So I think I've probably said this to Adam before, but in case I haven't, thanks a million for that, Adam. And I know there's mixed feelings in the physio world about Adam. If it's any consolation, Adam, whenever people tell me they don't like you, I always tell them you've been very kind to me and a good guy. So yeah.
I think one of the things the pandemic has done, we've talked about this a lot in various forums, but in bringing us all out and almost forcing us to communicate with each other, I think a lot of these caricatures have been broken down and, surprise, surprise, everyone is a mishmash of different character traits. And I think we've seen each other all a little bit more in the round, haven't we? Which I think is only a good thing. Yeah. So Evie, I guess the path of PhysiosOnline ties in very well with the subject of this podcast, which essentially is what is enough. So you started this project for the reasons you've just alluded to. It doesn't sound like it was that you'd spent weeks thinking about how to design this project. It's just something that was born out of a need, and then that need became obvious in a much wider field. And I remember you and I had a conversation a couple of months ago about how it was growing, and I was very intrigued as to what your plan was and where did you see it go next. We talked a little bit about do you monetize, do you not monetize, and I know that you've got this wonderful system going now where you donate a proportion of your profits to Giving Well. And the way that conversation went was around, we ended up talking about what's enough in life, really. And I think specifically, I can't remember why we ended up talking about jeans. I remember you telling me that you made a conscious decision a few years ago as to how many pairs of jeans you actually needed in life and how many things you needed in your house. And there's this temptation, isn't there, when you start something and perhaps it starts to grow bigger than you thought, and there's almost like a natural path that you could get drawn down. And I was quite intrigued in your thought processes about the point at which you have decided to stop in various parts of your life and go, yes, well, let me just work out what is enough, and then maybe make different decisions from that point. So yeah, I don't know if that what is enough question has come into PhysiosOnline, but I just found it quite an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it kind of has. It's an interesting one to talk about. So I'll try and answer your question, but my answer is going to be totally like half baked, and I'm
I'm
only
not sure I
figuring
even
it
asked you
out as I go
questions.
along.
Don't worry.
And I probably will have like, I'm only kind of figuring things out myself, and yeah, how I'm going to do things with physios and life, and physios and life, physios online,
Don't even know the name.
and life in general. Don't even know the name. No, but yeah, I guess I'm just kind of naturally I suppose I don't like too much stuff. Like I just don't like to have too much stuff around the place. I've never really been, I mean, I don't really know how to say this. I don't really want more than one or two pairs of jeans. I just actually, or I don't want like more than a couple of pairs of shoes or t-shirts or whatever. I just don't really understand in terms of what to do with PhysiosOnline and what would be enough. I just decided, okay, so at PhysiosOnline, what happened was we started to get more and more physios, more and more people being interested and wanting to join. And I was spending more and more time working on it. And it was taking up a good bit of my time and effort, and Christine's as well. So Christine is my wife, and she's the one who made our website.
Mm-hmm.
And so around Christmas kind of time, it came to the point of us going, okay, we're going to need to really figure out where are we actually going with this? Like, what are we going to do? Because people kept on asking us, like, how are we going to end up monetizing it? How will it be a business in the end? And people are really concerned with this question. People get very confused. And I think a bit like just weirded out if they're not having to pay for something.
Right.
So, like, eventually we just kind of went, okay, we're going to have to make a firm decision one way or the other. Are we going to make money out of this thing or try to make money out of it or not? And what's the kind of benefits either way? Like, I just don't really need or want to make money out of PhysiosOnline. It's not that we're like super rich or anything like that. It's just that we both have grand jobs. Our mortgage is not gonna kill us anytime soon. I don't expect that there's going to be any major scary financial things happening to us. So it's like I don't really need that much more money than what I currently have and I'm getting from the clinic. Now, I mean, I don't have anything against getting more money, but the point is it's not really, I wouldn't be doing more with PhysiosOnline if I thought that I was going to make money out of it, because I kind of have everything that I need. Like I think that's why I talked to you about jeans before. Like I actually don't need another pair of jeans. I don't want to go on holiday somewhere fancy. I don't really want to change the car, like actually ever. Like, the way it's kind of at some point, like I kind of have enough now. Like the kids are grand. We've got nice neighbors, so we're never probably going to want to move house because, like, kind of why would you? Like, there's enough rooms and there's nice neighbors around, and yeah. So I don't know what I don't know what would be the extra benefit of making money out of PhysiosOnline, and I've always kind of felt this way about things. As long as you have enough that you're not stressing about money or stressing about things, then you can kind of just,
What about the flip side? If PhysiosOnline is, I don't know if it's growing quicker than you imagined or going beyond what you had imagined. Is there a point in your mind at which that then starts to impact on your ability to create enough in your regular job?
Yeah, that's really the big question, isn't it? Like, yeah, that's where you have to draw the line a little bit and say, okay, if I'm actually spending time on this to the extent that it's costing me time in the rest of my life, like with my own actual clinic work, which is quite hectic as well, or with family time, then you have to be asking serious questions there. But also, you kind of have to ask yourself, or what me and Christine were wondering around Christmas is, okay, we're putting in a lot of our time and effort into this project. What is actually going to be the end result of this like expenditure of time and effort? And it turned out that what the result would be was that more patients in the UK would go to this group of independent physios in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's lovely. That's what we're going for, and that's great. But quite frankly, it wouldn't really wouldn't be enough to keep me and Christine motivated to keep doing this work that we're doing.
Okay.
So we thought, okay, what we'd actually like is to make this, to turn our time into funds that could be directed into GiveWell.org's Maximum Impact Fund. So me and Christine have discussed this long ago. There's this movement called effective altruism. The idea is basically this is like evidence-based charity. So, I think with charity, sometimes people's hearts are in the right place and they kind of they donate to whatever charity really speaks to their heart or sort of makes them feel a lot of empathy. But it's kind of like with healthcare, sometimes you're better off, looking at the evidence base of something. So the effective altruism movement is really concerned with trying to divert funds to the most effective charities. So being able to alleviate the most amount of human suffering for the least possible amount of money. So we've always thought this was kind of interesting, and we've, donated to effective charities and that kind of thing. And so we thought, okay, this will be really motivating if we know that our work is going to, yes, like promote the physiotherapy profession and promote the physios who are in our collective and have this public information campaign and all the rest of it. But if we know that there will be another outcome to the work, which will be that hopefully some people somewhere are going to be saved or at least alleviate some suffering from their lives, then this is very, very, very motivating. So that's why we've decided to, instead of us being like paid, I suppose, for work and time that we put into PhysiosOnline, this is pretty much our, like altruistic project is actually what it is. So the way we break it down is whenever people pay money into PhysiosOnline, so like it might be a member who's paying a contribution, or some people give us money even though they have no like no reason to, kind of, they just like our project, they just think it's great, so they give us money. It's amazing. Shout out to no, I won't name them in case they wouldn't want me to, but yeah, so whatever funds we get, half of it we put it into like site costs and advertising for PhysiosOnline. So that's so that we can actually maintain the PhysiosOnline project. So we'll like pay for Facebook ads or whatever costs we have associated with the website. But that's limited because we've decided from the start we're only going to let half of it go towards developing the project. The other half is going straight over to GiveWell.org's Maximum Impact Fund. So that's grand. That means we don't have to think about it. The Maximum Impact Fund, it sort of automatically adjusts so that money ends up going to the most effective charities at that moment, rather than us having to constantly evaluate which is the best and whatever.
It's a great
so long story short, we're doing this work and it'll be hopefully good for physios, good for patients, and we're happy because we're kind of generating income for GiveWell.org. I know it sounds kind of goody-goody, but it gives us a good feeling. That's kind of what we want to do.
Well, yeah. So let's take that idea of goody-goody, good feeling, altruism, all slightly different interpretations of a good feeling about yourself. And, bringing this back to my project with clinician wellbeing and the coaching and the ideas behind this You Matter podcast, there's the phrase of whether you are enough comes up a lot in coaching, and the fact that I don't feel enough is often presented as something to be talked about and addressed and picked apart, sometimes within the coaching sphere. And to me, that concept of being enough will mean very different things for different people. And I don't want to project onto you or make assumptions about why you run PhysiosOnline the way you do, but I wonder whether possibly part of enough for Evie needs to have this kind of project that feels a certain way. And on the other side of things, and over here, there's quite a lot of conversation around our sense of our own worth as a profession, as people, and in terms of what we charge. I think recently, I guess coming out of the pandemic, having had to extend our treatment times, business owners having to be a lot more focused about how their businesses are actually going to survive and then recover, and what they're going to look like in the future. I think the concept of charging has become a lot more to the in people's minds. And I'd quite like to chat to you a little bit about, I guess, the two concepts of self-worth and monetary worth in the context of not just physiotherapy, but being a healthcare professional. So, I mean, let's look at this monetary value, and I don't know if the status and the financial rewards for physio in Norway are the same as over here. Do you know, is there a sort of similarity in terms of
It would be like, I'd say it would be more or less like physio is sort of, it's one of those things loads of people would want to do it. It sort of has a you know, it's sort of a good thing if you say you're a physio. Yeah, like it's kind of has a bit of, I suppose, prestige associated with it. I imagine that they're about the same. I'm not 100% sure, no, Joe, but I'd say it's more or less the same, you know. Because like you're never going to be super wealthy, but you're doing probably better than very, very many people, I think. So yeah, you're probably doing a bit better than most.
There's a comparison, isn't there? A natural comparison of your hourly rate compared to, I don't know, your accountant or your lawyer or whatever. So does that sense of having your own personal barometer for enough, does that stray into your earning as well? Do you either consciously or subconsciously have a set point at which that feels enough and comfortable?
Yeah, I definitely would. Like, yeah, I suppose so. Like I wouldn't be particularly like wanting to change my work so that I would earn more money. Like I wouldn't be particularly motivating to me now if someone said you can have an extra, I don't know, 200,000 kroner a year. So, or I don't know, 100,000 kroner. Like it's about 10 to 1, I think.
Right,
so
okay.
In terms of kroner, yeah, it wouldn't be.
What would that be?
Sorry, that's not 100,000 pounds. No. That would be like a whole other thing. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how to say this. It's just that, let's say today is Wednesday. I'm looking up at the corner of my screen there. It's 16:39, so it's 20 to 5 on a typical Wednesday afternoon. I just wouldn't feel any different right now if I was earning like way more money than I am now. I'd still be sitting in the same place doing exactly the same thing. So I've realized this a very long time ago, that as long as you have enough money to cover the basis of what you want, then there's no point in sacrificing time or happiness or anything like that to like get more of it. But this is only if you feel that you're doing fine money wise. If I was worried financially, then there's no way I'd be putting loads of time into PhysiosOnline. I'd be putting that time into securing my own like financial security. So it just depends on where you're at in life. Like this is not probably something I would have been doing when I was 20 or however old, you know, when I was trying to get established myself.
Yeah. So maybe a time of life where it feels like you've got space.
Yeah. And I think part of this as well is that when I, like with PhysiosOnline, when I turned my whole clinic over to video straight away because I was used to doing video consults before. So I'd started doing video consults before the pandemic, you see. So it was really, really easy for me. Like it was kind of a no-brainer. My patients had no problem going over to video. It was just kind of a natural thing and no big deal. So I didn't suffer financially from the pandemic. And Christina's an IT consultant, so she was just working at home, earning the same amount. So we were kind of looking around going, okay, we're doing fine. For me, I was doing grand because I had video consults. Whereas, you know, for many people, this was just an economic disaster. So I think that's one of those things as well, that I was looking at it going, well, I have the time and the resources and the bandwidth to easily do this PhysiosOnline thing, and maybe it'll help some other physios who like are losing their income overnight, you know. So that was all kind of a part of it, I suppose.
It sounds very, very grounded and logical. Do you know where this comes from with you or in you?
No, not really. I don't. That's a good question. I think it's just kind of the way. I think it's just kind of the way I am. I think it comes from. Maybe it comes from. Gosh, Joe, I don't know. I've never really thought about that. I'm trying to think about my parents, if it's something that they did. Like, I mean, I think I've been incredibly lucky. Like that's one of the things. Like again, we were never super wealthy or anything. My family, and my dad and mom. Like my dad, when he was younger, when we three kids were small, he had a totally failed business, and they were very worried about like losing their house and all this kind of stuff. But then he managed to recover from it and did okay. And but I've been really, really lucky in that, like, I went to college. All three of us did, all three in my family, and my parents paid for us through college, like paid, what we needed. Like, fair enough, I worked a bit, I worked while I was in college for, as everyone kind of does. But the point is, I left college really with a degree in physio, with no student debt, and really no reason not to make a really good life for myself, which I think is what that's much more fortunate than very, very many people will ever have it. And then, I ended up meeting Christine, who, was an IT consultant, and she was always going to be fine financially as well. Fair enough, she had a bit of student debt, but it was not like nothing disastrous. And our health was pretty okay. And like, no disasters have ever happened to us. We're never going to have to support, I don't think, going to have to like support my parents or anything like that. All the kind of financial troubles that can happen to people in their lives, I think we've just kind of been spared and been lucky in many ways. So so I
you
think it
say
just
luck.
comes from
I'm hearing an awful lot of cup half full. I find it inspiring and interesting that you talk about your future with such assurance. I don't see financial burden upon us. I don't see any financial worries, and that to a large extent is outlook, isn't it? Whilst none of us can predict.
Do you know what it is a little bit as well? I'm realizing now as I talk to you that my parents instilled in us a real fear of, not a fear, but like an intense skepticism towards debt and credit. So I've never owed anything on a credit card, as in ever. And I don't think Christine ever has either. We're just naturally that way. And I'm just the kind of person that I would just never, ever want to have a lot of debt. So maybe that's part of it as well. Like, we started off very lucky with no or minimal student debt and with professional qualifications. So as long as you weren't going to do anything crazy or kind of a bit silly with money, then you should be fine. Whereas I think if I had, I don't know, wanted to buy fancy stuff, or if I'd had some expensive interests, it would have been more difficult then. But yeah, I forgot about that bit. Yeah, it also helps that I didn't spend a lot of money on, I don't know, stuff.
I know I've heard you talk before about Stoic philosophy, and I've been very impressed with some of the books you've read and comments you've made. But,
oh my gosh.
And I'm speaking not as an expert on that philosophy, but I know there's a background in that to controlling what you can control, and then not going with the flow, but not overly focusing on the things which you can neither predict nor control. Do you think Stoic philosophy has fed into a philosophy that you naturally had anyway, or has it informed you in any way?
Do you know what? Stoic philosophy it's my unicorn. It's the kind of thing that I wish I was like Stoic or whatever. And I read books and I listen to podcasts, hoping that somehow it will just be like absorbed into me. But it's so not my personality. Like, I'm just so not a Stoic person. I'm never going to be.
So which bits of it do you think are not you?
Oh God, like all of it. No. I mean, I wish it was like all that, I could just, Joe, I can picture myself as a wonderful Stoic, just taking a step back and taking a breath and remembering that, that is within my control, and that other thing that is not within my control, I just don't need to think about it at all. But like, that's not at all how my brain works. Like, I mean, I constantly be worrying about things that I can't control at all. I think I'm fairly neurotic as people go, to be honest. I think the bit of stoicism that I read tries to like do something about some of that, but I'm a real, like, I'd be really, up and down kind of person. I get really worried about stuff. Like, I'm not an emotionally smooth smooth sailing kind of girl at all. So I think Stoicism speaks to me because it's like aspirational. It's like how I wish I was,
Yeah, your unicorn.
if my mind was a bit more settled.
That's so interesting. I don't know if the people listening will feel the same, but from all the ways you've been talking about your attitude towards work and PhysioOnline and your kind of calm confidence about the future, I would challenge Evie that you haven't got a little bit of stoicism. So whether it's come through osmosis, I'd keep listening to those podcasts.
Do you know what it is? I have like stoicism like in my mind. I understand the sense of it, but that doesn't mean. Do you know what it is? It's like in the Matrix. There's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path, Joe.
Right.
I know what I should think and feel about things, and I know that thoughts should be able to direct feelings to a certain extent. But usually I just feel as if I'm in a bit of a, emotions just go everywhere all the time, and you just kind of have to, head down and get through it.
Have you heard the notion, I've had various authors and people quoted on variations of this theory at the moment, that we like to think that we are thinking beings who occasionally experience emotion or act on emotion, whereas in actual fact we are highly emotional beings who occasionally think, and that an awful lot of our actions are based on intuition and emotion and gut feeling, and then we spend an awful lot of energy and cognitive load trying to justify the emotions we have just acted upon, which is not to say it's a bad thing. It's just a reframe of how we function as humans.
Yeah, no, but I think that's probably right. But I also think that it's right that you can modulate emotions by learning different ways of thinking about things. I mean, I don't think that that's not possible, but I do think that a lot of times we'll have an emotion and then we sort of try to rationalize the emotion to ourselves by thinking about it afterwards and telling ourselves a story about it. Whereas it could just be, do you know, it kind of reminds me of like when sometimes my daughter comes in from crash and she's just like angry or upset or just in a bad mood because it's 4 o'clock and she's probably hangry, right? But if you say to her like, Cara, what's wrong? Like, did something happen? You can almost see the wheels turning in her mind as she tries to come up with a reason why she's feeling the way she is. I think adults are exactly the same way. Like you might just be feeling really, I don't know, I mean, tired or excited or just whatever way you're feeling. If someone asks you why, you're kind of just going to have to make up some reasons, really.
Yeah, rather than I'm just really disappointed or really embarrassed or yeah. So let's have a little bit of a diversion again, because before we started talking about sort of financial worth, I touched on this idea, which I think is really relevant in healthcare, about your worth professionally. So we get on a bit of a train, don't we? We get our degree, we start our first job. I think pretty quick, if not immediately, we're on to CPD. Some of us do postgraduate degrees, things like that. I don't know, I just have this idea that we get into a little bit of what I call the qualification trap. And this sense of what is enough for me feeds into this as well. What is enough knowledge? What is enough patient mileage? What is enough confidence? What is enough technical skills? I don't know, what do you think about this in terms of our professional enoughness?
Yeah, like when are you going to know enough to feel really good about going into clinic, or like when are you going to know enough to feel really badass when you write the next letter to a GP?
And who are you going to be when you're enough? Who is it who is this enough person?
It's an interesting one. Like I think there's so much CPD available, there are so many options available that you could pretty much just keep on looking for the next answer and the next bit of inspiration or the next bit of knowledge. I don't really know if you should keep doing that. I seem to keep on doing that.
Yeah, me too.
And but there's probably a way to balance it where you can say, I keep on looking for new knowledge, or you could say qualifications or CPD, or you want to keep on being better as a professional, But that doesn't mean that you have to do it because you think that you're not good enough as you already are, I suppose. And maybe there's like a balance there where you could think to yourself, well, what I know now is quite valuable and quite, I'm quote unquote enough as I am now, but it would be interesting to learn a bit more about this topic, or yeah, maybe something like that.
Yeah, I mean, understandably, early in your career, there's going to be quite a focus on improving your technical ability. And, goodness knows, I don't know what your early career was like, but there were frequent reminders to me that my technical ability, there were not just gaps, there were grey chasms in, or as I saw them at the time. And I strove to fill those holes.
Yeah.
But then I wonder whether that became just a pattern, and, a lot of those holes were actually full.
Like, Joe, what is a good physio anyway? Like, what actually makes a good physio?
Should we
Like,
have
how
a
would
go?
you know?
Should we try and define it?
Yeah.
So what are the absolute what are the definites? What must be there? So how much technical expertise does a good physio need to have?
Yeah, okay, right. I'm just going to shortcut this answer by saying that I've come to believe that it's not the therapy, it's the therapist. So, like, I think it might not matter very much at all how much technical ability you have or how much knowledge you have. I think the success in a physiotherapy encounter, it's just going to be some kind of magic special gel between the physio and the patient, depending on what type of person the physio is and what type of person the patient is and how they communicate. And it's some kind of really intangible thing that's going on between patient and clinician that's going to determine whether that patient or that person has a good outcome.
And by
So
that
it
very
could be that,
nature,
yeah, like
you're
it
only
could
going to
be that
hit.
technical skills and knowledge and everything else isn't really much to do with that. It could be.
So you're talking about a sweet spot, aren't you? At which the point of the, I guess, the knowledge base plus the personality plus the experience of the physio in certain instances will exactly marry with the expectation and the knowledge base and the experience and the personality of the patient occasionally. So we're talking like holy grail, that's your unicorn physio treatment. So how many times, that's not going to happen in every patient interaction, is it? Let's be realistic.
No.
So how many times does that need to happen for you to be enough for a good physio? How many,
then you need to be, this is, I'm about to bring in some stoicism.
Oh,
Watch
go on
this.
then.
Watch this. No, I think that's where you have to kind of not have to, but it might be a good idea to define success, your own success as a clinician, by what you did in that interaction or how you carried yourself or how you kind of tried in that interaction, rather than defining your success based on the actual outcome, the treatment outcome. So you'd say, I did well in this because I ... rather than I'm a great physio because this patient got better. So you want to be kind of, I think you'll feel as if you did well as a physio if you're working kind of in alignment with your own values. Like if you really truly believe that you can help a patient very well with really good strength and conditioning knowledge, then I think you'll feel like a good physio if you really have a lot of strength and conditioning knowledge. And I think that if you're the kind of person who you don't really believe much, or you don't think that maybe manipulations are a good idea, I think you're going to feel like a good physio if you are not, in other words, if you're treating people in accordance with what you think is important, what you yourself value. That's like a part of being a good physio. I think the way to make yourself feel like not a very good physio is if you're doing treatments that you don't really 100% think are the right thing to do in general.
Yeah.
Or if you're not able to do treatments that you wish you could. So like, let's say you're really strapped for time and you can't speak to a patient as much as you'd like to, or listen to them as much as you'd like to, or just spend enough time with them, then you'll probably feel quite bad about that interaction. Or if you're in a situation where, I've had this before working in private practice, where you feel that there's an expectation for you to do a certain treatment, but it doesn't really line up 100% with your values, like with what you really feel like physio should be doing, then if you're doing that treatment, you're going to feel like a bad physio or such, or you're going to feel like not enough, or it's going to affect your self-esteem or what have you.
I love that. Well, I don't love the thought of that situation, but I love what you're bringing forward there, which is an idea that you almost listen to your own discomfort and don't immediately make that about your worth. It's about whether, as you say, you're in the right environment, whether you're being allowed to work according to your own values and your skill set. It reminds me of a phrase that often comes up in coaching, actually, that you're doing the best you can with the resources you have available at the time. And I think that ties in with what you were saying, which is, it's almost like you're not doing your best, because that's incredibly loaded statement and leans into perfectionism a little bit. But it's, what I think you're saying is that if in each patient interaction you are turning up and delivering the service and the therapy which makes the very best of the resources and skills and personality and environment that you have available to you, then that is when you are a good physiotherapist, person, whatever.
It's when you're working in alignment with your own values and your own beliefs, and importantly that you have thought about what those values and beliefs actually are, and you're pretty happy with how you've come to believe and value those things.
So if you were talking to a newly qualified student, or you were supervising a young therapist just at the start of their career, with that in mind, what kind of advice would you give them? So if we're trying to move to a point where people do feel enough, where physios and healthcare professionals do feel enough, what bits of advice would you give them at that stage in their career?
Gosh, the first thing I think like that just kind of comes into my mind is to advise them that the most important factor in being happy in their profession, it's going to be to have a sense of autonomy. Okay. So do whatever, make sure that you get some kind of autonomy early on, because if you don't have any autonomy, then you can't treat people in accordance with your own values the way you'd like to. You're going to feel really really down. Like this is just from my own experience working in private practice, that I didn't really enjoy because I didn't have enough autonomy. I don't know if this is just me. Maybe I particularly need a lot of autonomy, but I think it might be the case for many people. So rather than going after I don't know, some other goal, like maybe more, I don't know if like more money is an alternative. It probably isn't an alternative to more autonomy. I don't know. But the point is, put it up at the top of your list somewhere in terms of stuff that you want in your working life. Like if there's a list of what I'd like in my working life, good hours, enough money, put some amount of autonomy really high up on that list and make sure you get that done.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm really enthused by the idea of people, I keep using this phrase, curating their own careers as opposed to just following a set path. And actually, I posed the question as if you were talking to a newly qualified or a young physio, but actually there are touch points in everyone's career, aren't there, where there's a moment of, oh, this did feel right and it doesn't feel right now. And we don't spend a lot of time looking, as you say, at things like values and working out what's important to us, and has that changed? Are the things that are important to me now the same as when I first qualified or before I had children or whatever? I think we spend a lot of time trying to squeeze ourselves into a professional mold rather than thinking, well, who am I, who have I become, who am I in the world now, and how do I fit that around me? And then maybe that sort of elusive next qualification or that amazing skill that we think we need maybe just falls by the wayside a little bit because it isn't so important.
Like you might not really need that thing if you have your own, have your own definition of what success is to you. Like have your own definition of success. There's a poem. Okay, there's a poem springing to mind. The reason why there's a poem springing to mind is because it's like my favorite poem / my only poem. I'm not like a super poetry person or anything.
Give us a poem, Evie. Go on.
I'll give you a bit of a poem.
Yeah.
There's a poem that I heard. It's by David White, who's a poet. I only heard this poet of, like I say, I'm not like a poetry person, I don't think. But I heard his poem on this Waking Up app, which is like a meditation app that I use.
Okay.
And the poem is called Start Close In. And I heard this poem, I think I first heard it around the time that PhysiosOnline was starting up. And I've listened to it so much, and I kind of, he just sums up a lot of what we're talking about in this conversation, I think, in terms of like having your own definition of success and that kind of stuff. To hear another's voice, follow your own voice. Wait until that voice becomes an intimate, private ear that can really listen to another. Start right now. Take a small step you can call your own. Don't follow someone else's heroics. Be humble and focused. Start close in. Don't mistake that other for your own. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing, close in, the step you don't want to take. Isn't that brilliant?
I love that you had the composure to look up the poem online whilst on a podcast. Yeah. I think that shows
it's an easy one to find. It's called Start Close In. So type it in, Start Close In, David White, and you'll find it. But yeah, no, it's a good one. But anyway, what he's saying in that poem is like, don't follow someone else's heroics. Like, start with your own question.
Yes.
And kind of listen to yourself. And, it could be that what's, good for you, that's not for me. Like, if someone else wants to do a qualification in something or other, or do manips, or do strength and conditioning training, or whatever it is someone else is doing, good for them. But maybe it's not for you. And that's probably fine.
And that really moves us away from that guru culture, doesn't it? So, even the gurus, I'm sure, didn't start out with any notion of heroics. They probably took their first step. But as you say, it may not be the right one for you. Oh, Evie, time is ticking on. What a great conversation. I
can't believe I ended up saying a poem.
I think that's fantastic. You're my first podcast poem. So well done. Big tick. Now, how's Bruce, do you think? Sorry, I brought your attention back to the castration.
Like, I spent a few minutes there not thinking about bunny castration, Joe, and you just brought me right
straight back.
I don't know how he is. I'll have a quick glance at my phone. No messages yet, so no news is good news. He'll soon be home.
Let's send lots of love to Bruce. Hopefully by the time this podcast goes out, it will be a dim and distant memory for both Bruce.
He'll be fully recovered. He'll be hopping around, binkying like there's no tomorrow. It'll be fine.
Binkying.
I don't know if you can say binkying. Binky is when they jump up in happiness and all their 4 feet leave the floor and they just jump. It's called a binky. Isn't that brilliant?
I think the notion of a binky is a wonderful place to finish this conversation. Thank you so much, Evie. That was a great conversation, and I hope that you have a lovely afternoon. I hope Bruce as well. I hope he enjoys his future binking. And here's to staying close in and taking the first step, not the second or the third. So there you go, another great conversation with another great clinician. I'm really grateful to Evie for all those insights into not just her professional life, but personal life as well. And I particularly enjoyed the conversations around her views on her ambitions for PhysiosOnline and for life in general. I found her outlook very refreshing. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and I would love to have your feedback. If you haven't already subscribed to YouMatter, then do that on whatever platform you listen to your podcasts. That will make sure you always get informed of when there's a new episode. And if you're able to leave me a rating, that will really help to boost YouMatter up the podcast listings. So let me know how you found this episode. Let me know if there's any conversations you would like me to conduct. Let me know if you'd like to come and talk with me on YouMatter. And remember, if you are a busy clinician being all things to everybody all day in all spheres of life, then take some time, take a moment for yourself, because you matter.